fair one.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Frasers Perspective Podcast, a series in which we talk about trends and innovations that are changing the face of property development in Australia. I'm your host, Natasha Roberton. Today's topic is an absolutely terrific one. We're talking about the urban heat island effect. And what is it? What is its effect on our livability and our health, and most importantly, what can be done about it? Walking us through it today is our guest, Olivia Leal-Walker. Hello.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
Great. Olivia is an innovation manager at Frasers Property, based here in Sydney, and the winner of the Urban Development Institute of Australia's Roy Sheargold Scholarship, and currently halfway through a fascinating research project on a potential mitigator for the urban heat island effect. So I think before we dive into what that research project is, perhaps we could start with a little bit about you, Olivia. Tell us a bit about what's it like to be an innovation manager? What does an innovation manager do?
To be an innovation manager is probably the most exciting job that you can have. So it's all about creating change that adds value. And so a lot of what I do day to day is walking alongside some of our leaders and trying to understand what the challenges are that they face, but also the people on the ground who are interacting with our customers and trying to work out ways that we can solve those challenges. So really it's all about getting out there and talking to our customers, understanding what's going on in their lives and how we can try and improve that for them, and then doing experimentation to make sure we're doing and delivering the right thing.
Fantastic. So, and I understand it that one of the things that you're doing experimentation and some research on is around this issue of the urban heat island effect. Could you talk us through what that is?
Yeah. So have you ever jumped in a black car on a really hot day or worn a black T-shirt?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the sun just soaks into your skin. So that's kind of what the urban heat island's all about. When we build lots of buildings and we knock down trees and we replace it with concrete and black tar, the sun is soaking into that urban environment. And what that ends up in reality is up to a 10-degree difference during heat waves, and it's particularly perverse in Western Sydney versus the rest of Sydney. And for me, this is a huge, huge passion project and a big challenge and frustration because I grew up in Western Sydney.
Right.
And they're the people that I love and it's the place that I love. And I'm witnessing a lot of development that's going through that's small blocks, no trees, dark roofs. And I know that the impact that that's having on the people who live there.
You know, in terms of giving us facts and figures, what can you point to that would be able to, so we could get our heads around what the actual livability impacts are of this urban heat island effect?
Yeah, it's real. So you're 3 times more likely to die from heat in Western Sydney than you are in Sydney because of the impact of this urban heat island effect. Your electricity demand is 100% greater during heat waves because of the air conditioning load that puts on the grid. And so what it really comes down to is 3 things. It's comfort, it's cost, and it's your community. So where you've got a white roof, your home could be 4.7 degrees cooler on a hot day. And that's a big difference when we're talking about these really hot summers that we've been having lately and that are going to increase in frequency. When you think about the people who are dying and who are at risk during these heat waves, it's the elderly and it's our marginalised people. And so that same temperature difference, that 4.7 degrees, can save up to 34% on your air conditioning costs, which is huge when we know how much the cost of electricity is and the impact that has on people's wallets. And then when I think about the community, like to me this is something that's really important because if you go for a walk down one of those developments that I'm talking about, would you? No, you wouldn't actually because it's hot and it's not.
Yeah, no trees.
Yeah.
Baking heat.
Yeah.
Pretty uncomfortable.
That heat that you can see rising off the tar.
Yeah, so I guess the issue here is people would just stay inside their houses. And I suppose then you have that added cost of social isolation, health impacts because people can't move around as much, which is sort of ironic because you're trapped in your house, but your house is really hot because it's got this sort of heat attracting roof sitting on top of it. So your research is looking into if we switched that up and we swapped black roofs, black tiles or black materials, dark coloured materials, to lighter coloured materials, what impact would that actually have on, efficiency, energy costs, ambient temperature inside the house and general livability? How's your research going? How is it structured? Do you want to talk us a bit what your process has been so far and what still lies ahead?
Yeah, sure. So I've gone with white roofs as the project to tackle urban heat island effect because it's something that can galvanise people and that's really visible. Because you can tackle urban heat island effect through increasing water bodies, increasing vegetation and the like. But they're really complicated things with lots of stakeholders and lots of other challenges that go alongside those. Absolutely necessary, but a bit more tricky. Well, I thought white roofs would be simple, but it turns out that it's not quite as simple. So I'm tackling it a bit differently. I'd originally thought of a few solutions to go to this problem, things around advocating for policy or offering discounts to developers. But due to my role in innovation and these things that I'm learning about how to do things differently, I'm really glad that that's not the approach that I went down. So I've interviewed seven developers, councils and product suppliers to actually understand, well, what's going on the ground? Because there is so much research out there about white roofs and a lot of it's happening in our universities and from government agencies, but it's not percolating through to developments. It's not being realised.
Right.
And so I didn't think I could add more value by doing more technical research, but by actually understanding, well, what's the decisions that are being made on the ground day to day and why they're being made.
So, and what are you discovering? I mean, is the issue coming from customers or is it coming from developers?
Yeah.
Or is it a bit of both?
It's really a huge catch-22. So customers, what I'm discovering is customers are actually quite fearful to purchase anything other than a black roof. So it's seen as something that's prestigious, but it's also seen as something that's a safe option. Because if you're in a development with 1,000 homes and they're all the same colour, to stand out would actually potentially put your resale value at risk, or at least that's how it's perceived.
Right.
And yet all that's in the marketing material is dark coloured roofs. And so it kind of escalates that perception that that's what's the right thing to do and the right choice to do. And so, it's funny, I've been talking to these developers and they're really priding themselves on the colour choice that's available to them. And what they're offering in these brochures is you've got light grey, you've got dark grey, darker grey, black, a bit more black. So that choice isn't actually a thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like the you can have any colour you want as long as it's black kind of approach. So really it's not – they're sort of selling the illusion of choice, but there really isn't a lot of choice. Yeah. And even if there were, I think what I'm hearing you say is that customers are too conservative or don't know enough yet as to why they might choose a lighter colour for their roofs. So is that the kind of thing ultimately that you're pushing for, some sort of paradigm shift in the way the market thinks about this?
Yeah, but I think it's getting to the right people, and the right people are the consumers. Some of the other things that I found just by talking to people is that even when they do know, it hasn't necessarily resulted in a change. So I've spoken to developers who are really quite aware of this as an issue and have it on their own homes and yet are heading up developments that are full of black roofs. Talking to some suppliers, their customers are coming up and asking if it's having an impact, and they're brushing it under the carpet of, oh, no, it's fine, don't worry about it. So I think that, yes, perception is probably going to be the biggest place that we play in this area. But it needs to be at that coalface with customers to make them feel safe, to normalise that behaviour. One of the things that came up which really blew my mind was that there is a slight shift towards white roofs, but what's driving it is Instagram influencers.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so they're seeing these really glamorous, prestigious white homes, and now people are starting to mirror that behaviour. So that shows as well that the solution, it needs to be in that prestigious home.
So it's almost first. As if there's almost like a fashion appeal.
Yeah.
That's now starting to creep in thanks to, glamorous influencers on Instagram that may actually engineer a change where perhaps science and has failed. That would be pretty ironic actually, but there you have it.
I mean, you're buying your house, right? It's all about emotions.
Totally, of course. So, look, white roofs, or light-coloured roofs, where could we find examples of these kinds of homes and communities in Australia? Is Frasers doing this anywhere?
So white roofs are happening in small pockets. Fairwater in Blacktown, which is one of Frasers Property's developments, does have white roofs. That was primarily driven by Green Star as a tool to make those choices. And you feel the difference when you walk out there. There is a lot of vegetation, there is a lot of water bodies as well, but it feels cooler. It feels like you can go for a walk in the afternoon and be more connected to your community because it's more comfortable.
Just a question there. I mean, is that an example where if everybody has white roofs, nobody feels that they're standing out to some degree, that sense of, I'm worried about the resale value of my home goes away because the entire neighbourhood or the entire community is part of this approach? Is that what's happening at Fairwater? Because from what I understand, it's one of your best selling estates.
I imagine that plays a really big part in it. I've spoken to customers out at Fairwater before, and so my previous role was in sustainability, which again, a lot of this passion comes from, and sat down with them, and they came and they showed me the geothermal that's in their home at Fairwater, and they were so proud of it. And so I think giving people information and knowledge around some of these sustainability aspects, whether it's geothermal or whether it's their white roof, they feel empowered and they feel like they've made the right choice. And I think that plays a really big part in it. It's that feeling of pride in their investment that they made the right choice.
So do you think that there may also be cultural differences in consumer take-up or, attractiveness to white roofs?
Yeah, it came up in a few interviews actually, and it really surprised me. I hadn't expected that it would have much of an impact at all. But depending on where your country of origin is, and we all know Western Sydney is really quite multicultural, it does influence choice. So if you grow up in a place where dark shingle tiles are seen as prestigious, then that's what you're going to want. And this is a challenge for white roofs. There are a lot of benefits of it, and we've spoken about them, but there are also quite a few challenges that come up with this. And one of them is maintenance. And so if you've got a white roof tile, that's going to require a lot more maintenance because things like mould will show up a lot more clearly than if you have a steel product. And yet the cost curve of roof tiles for a steel product means that that's a little bit more prohibitive for people. And so all of this kind of ties in together when people's perceptions, again, makes a really big difference.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying now about, say, it seemed simple when you started out, but there are obviously a lot more complexities that you're starting to uncover as you get through this research. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was around solar panels. Obviously, the popularity of solar panels, so the cost of solar panels continues to come down, and so the popularity of solar panels goes up. And that's also the way people are starting to, manage cost efficiency in their homes and mitigate heat during heat waves. How does that work if you had a white roof but you put black solar panels on it? Does it cancel it out?
So solar and white roofs work really well hand in hand in one aspect, and on the other aspect, it's another one of those challenges. So the challenge is that what's coming to market now, and which looks brilliant, is these solar integrated tiles. And so your tile product is a solar panel, and it looks great, it's neat, it's flush to the roof. So you need them to be black, right? Because currently solar's black. On the converse, the cooler that roof that your solar panel is sitting on, the more efficient it's going to be working. And so you can put a black solar panel on a white roof, and it's actually going to help you get more money. Harder. Yeah, get more bang for your buck with your solar.
Okay, that's good to know. So, look, tell us a bit about the realities you think of promoting change in the construction space. At what point, in your view, do you think sort of the inertia that probably exists in the mass housing construction sector, what point does that give way to wholesale change?
If I knew the answer to that question, sure. We probably wouldn't need to be here. It's real. That inertia is really real. In some of these interviews that I've conducted, I found it really quite challenging to listen to the views that are occurring. But there are ways that shifts can happen, and shifts do happen, but I do think it needs to be consumer driven, because a lot of these developers are also feeling the pinch. They're getting a lot of pressure from council and the like for really good reasons. And so unless a consumer's demanding this, then they're not going to create that change. So I think, again, it goes back to giving people, people who are purchasing our homes, something that they can be proud of and something that they're going to think is really cool and want to spend that money on more than just a marble bench top.
So you've done the initial stages of your research. You've interviewed some developers. You've interviewed some materials suppliers. What's next? What's the next part of the project, the research project, look like? And when do you expect to wrap up? What does that look like?
Yeah. So the next part of this project is holding an ideation session. So essentially bringing all of our stakeholders together in the room. I think the challenge that we're really going to focus on is that changing perception piece for customers, which again isn't what I would have naturally started with at the beginning, but it looks like the biggest opportunity. And get the people who are going to be making these decisions on the ground to come up with the ideas. And then we'll experiment. We'll try and run it the cheapest, leanest possible way and a minimum viable product, like the smallest way that we can do, to get all the answers we need to try and implement something that will hopefully see every roof in Western Sydney turn white.
Wow. Lofty goals. Fantastic. So, look, I guess when your ideation process is complete and you've got some results to share, would you come back and share them with us?
Yeah, of course. Wonderful. This has been great fun.
Awesome. I think that would be fantastic. It really, really is a really fascinating subject, and it's one of those things you don't think about unless you happen to be flying over Sydney, which I happen to do on a fairly regular basis, and you look down and you see all of those dark roofs or all of those red roofs. The idea that you might sort of start to see new suburbs or new communities within that urban fabric start to change colour, that would be an amazing thing to see.
This problem is so important because it's impacting people and their lives. You know, we all hear about the Black Saturday bushfires in Victoria back in 2007, and they killed 173 people. But we don't hear that twice as many people died during the heatwave that surrounded those events. And talking to one of the councils, she was sharing stories of people who have to travel between the floors in their apartments because the heat is so bad that they can't sleep at night. And so then they're at 3 a.m. in the morning, they're in shopping centres trying to stay cool in the air conditioning.
This is no way to live.
Yeah.
So for you, this is deeply personal and emotional and you know, vitally important for people's welfare and well-being going forward, not just the planet, but for, you know, actual livability.
And if all we did was change our roof colour, how simple could that be? It does seem
pretty simple.
Yeah.
Well, I must say this is a pretty fascinating subject and a fascinating innovation for an innovation manager to be working on. I'm guessing you would say that this is a great one. Are your peers jealous?
Are they jealous? Probably wondering what I got myself stuck into.
Well, I'm sure they'll be tuning in when you come back sometime next year with results to talk to us about. So I think this is probably a good place to wrap up. As I said, incredible subject and some really interesting work yet to come on it. So thank you, Olivia, for coming along and talking to us about it today.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And if you're listening to this, I really want to challenge you to think about what could you do to help the people that you're building for live cooler and happy and healthier lives.
There you have it. All right, on that note, we'll wrap up. Thanks, everyone, for listening to another edition of the Frasers Perspective Podcast. Until next time.